Right, so doing an awful lot of work on the bike. You've got a lot of the frame in. Steering's on. I've kind of got the knee pads on now. I've got to work out how to do this because obviously when you get on, your knees will go onto this point here and your feet onto the units at the back, but I haven't got the units at the back sorted yet. And then obviously then the steering will work. Yeah, I mean this is just the main structure of the frame going on. I say I've got these back bits to do. They're not right at the moment. So this is where we're at so far. Right, as you can see, I've drastically changed the design. What I had is I had the motor basically fixed on here, and there was a direct drive to the back wheel. Now, strictly speaking, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a wooden wheel, but it's a big object, so I was a bit concerned there might be too much stress on this small axle. Now, if you can see here, these are only kind of like 1/2 inch axles. Now, they are pretty tough. They're designed to be very, very strong. But it seemed like maybe that was a bit of a recipe for sort of disaster. You know, because obviously if that axle were to bend, then nothing would work. And obviously it would all break. So the plan now is to basically, if I extend this and put an axle through, the wheel would freewheel on the axle. What I will then do is I will use the drive sprocket on the back wheel, mount the motor inboard a little bit and drive it like you would a normal motorcycle, like a normal bicycle. Also, I'll have a gearing effect here, meaning I'm going to get more speed from that motor. There won't be any torque or any twisting force on the motor shaft itself, because that will now be taken on the main axle, which of course will be more than enough to support it. So that is the modification. So join me next time when it's all welded together. Right, so you can see I've changed the design completely. I've got the chain rear sprocket mounted to the wheel, front sprocket welded onto the motor pivot there, chain in place. Probably need a bit of tensioning on the chain. It's a bit slack at the moment, but it's fine. Motor's kind of tack welded in place because we're going to do a test. Now, as you can see, I've got this thing hanging here on the back. For those of you that don't know, wheelchair motors come fitted with an electromagnetic lock. And the idea is that basically that key affair fits onto there on the back of the motor. And when current isn't applied to the motor, it kind of locks it in place. Now, they're a pain. Don't need them. Take it off, cut the wires. You don't need it because you've got the motor and you've got the gearbox anyway. So what we are going to do now, just a little battery, so it won't run any sort of power. This is just going to see whether the back wheel turns. So it's either going to turn or it's going to fall off. So there'll be a lot of torque in it, so it'll probably wobble a bit, but let's see. It works! Sounds as rough as old nails, but I'm sure that'll be fine. I mean, let's face it, there's no point in me engineering all this within millimetre tolerances when I'm working with 300-year-old wheels that are fixed together with, well, I don't know what they're fixed together with. I mean, I have no idea. Nails, I think. And they're so, well, perfect example. I just loosen it off. You can see it's not exactly true. It kind of moves that way quite a lot. And as I said, they've probably been stuck on a cart for about 300 years. But not anymore. Right, I've taken the wheels off. You can see we're basically making up the frame. It's all a bit rough and ready. The welds aren't particularly pretty, but to be perfectly honest, I actually kind of think that suits it. It's almost kind of like makeshift Heath Robinson, sort of, if that is, I don't even know what that means, Heath Robinson, to be honest. Comments below, please. What does Heath Robinson mean? I don't know. Yeah, so put a bit of etch primer on it, let it dry in this gorgeous sunshine, and then put a bit of black paint and see where we're at. Right, so this seemed like a really good idea at one point. You know, cartwheels, all that kind of stuff. But now I'm going to test it to see if it works. And I'm terrified already. It doesn't steer. I can't even move the steering properly, look. Oh, actually, it's not too bad. Oh, better. I'm really scared. Here we go. Ah! Ah! There are no brakes. I might need some brakes. Right, I've got to disengage the motor to actually wheel it backwards. I'll try again. Ah, it really has no brakes. I've done a bit more. Right, so I've done a little bit more work on the SteamPod. I think we're going to call it the SteamPod. SteamPod Mark II, yeah. So I'm just mocking up where panels are going at the moment. So, back here changed. When you first saw it, it had a direct drive, so the motor was directly attached to the back wheel. And I was a bit concerned about the fact that the shaft inside the gearbox in here is only about ½ inch. And the problem with that, with such a big wheel, not necessarily the weight of the wheel, but it's a large area, so the turning force is such that I was worried that it might bend the axle. So, simple solution to that. The wheel is put onto a straightforward axle, and then it's chain driven back to the motor. And of course, what this does is it adds in terms of gearing, so we get a better gear ratio and get more speed. The batteries are kind of housed down here in this kind of unit here, so they're going to be the main power for the motor. And then I'll see if I can get a secondary battery unit in here to run some 12 volts, maybe some lights, other bits and pieces. And then of course there is the smoke generator. Now I'm not sure whether we're going to do that yet. I think it would look spectacular, but it would be a matter of working out how we mount that, where the smoke unit would obviously go inside here, and then it will be kind of routed back to a big chimney coming off the back of it or something like that. I don't know yet. But as you can see, all this is just all being mocked up. Once it's all mocked up, it's all going to be taken off, filed down, sanded down, finished, and then painted. But so far, oh yeah, and there's no side stand at the moment, it's just hanging on a block of wood. Handlebars were altered slightly. Initially, I thought it would actually be better if I just sit on it and get an idea. Initially, I thought it would be better if you were holding, because it's such a big wheel, the handlebars on the outside, like you would a bicycle, so there would be a greater force in turning. But actually, the bat bike design, where you actually have your hands on the inside, actually proved to be better, and it actually gives you slightly more force on turning the wheel. Now I've put a lock on it, so that's full steering lock, but that's more than enough. If it was more than that, as soon as you get going, you're just going to drop it. So it should be much more stable because of that. Now you've got much more control over where the front wheel is going. Ah!